Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Hello. Welcome to Yogananda podcast. We're on now chapter 15. I'm with just Christopher and Lauren. How are you two?
Thank you.
Very well.
Good. So we're just starting chapter 15. Pretty exciting. It's quite a intriguing chapter. The what's it called? The cauliflower robbery, is it? Yes, it is.
Yep.
I was going to say thievery or something. No, it's robbery. Last episode, I gave a sort of précis of what's going to come, but in terms of my expectations from this chapter, I'm really very much looking forward to three things actually. The quite funny story of the cauliflower robbery itself, which has got some pretty timeless jokes, and I'll tell you what I mean by that probably in this episode. But this chapter is actually a whole lot more than just the cauliflower robbery, isn't it? And so much so that we've had to split it up into 8 episodes, and some of them are quite in depth that you wouldn't really expect to be in this chapter, but hey ho, they're here. One of the complex things is about ragas, and Indian classical music being exceptionally complex. But if Guruji has put it into the book and put this much detail into it, it must be necessary study for us, probably because everyone loves music. But he really goes into depth, so I'm very much looking forward to doing that, because whenever I studied Indian music, because of the complexity of the things or the content, I always just like glossed over it, just hoping like I can get away with never having to go deep into it. But now we're going to have to. It's, in fact, I'd say that the depth he's gone into it is only matched by the depth of the Kriya Yoga, actually. So second, this comes second place, which shows you how much he's delved into this. It's quite phenomenal. Chris?
Yeah, it's a fair point, well raised. It's funny how we pay attention to different things, right? And my memory of this chapter was just simply around the fascination of how did this work? How did this story come about to be? And Guruji breaks it down for us. We'll cover it in the following episode as to how the I don't want to spoiler alert. I'm sure everybody listening has already read it and knows exactly what's going to happen. But Sri Yukteswar works with the would-be thief is fascinating to me, endlessly fascinating. So I'm really looking forward to going into that in more detail. But of course, you know, the music and everything else is also amazing. But for me, it's what science might lie behind the action that Sri Yukteswar displays for us.
I'm also looking forward to the Indian classical music section, because I'd also been quite curious about it for a while, but not really known where to delve in or how. And then I read about it in the Autobiography. I was like, wow, yes, there is something here. So it'd be lovely, I think, for me to like delve even more into it. And also Guruji has this wonderful way of putting this book together. You know, we've just had quite a expansive, mind-expanding chapter previously with the Samadhi poem and everything, and now he's treating us to a nice story. So it's quite nice.
Once upon a time.
Yeah.
Well, we know Lauren's very much into her music, so we'll doubtless rely on her expertise for some of the
I'm not sure about that, Priyank.
More so than the rest of us anyway, Lauren. Don't be too humble. So the other thing I'm looking forward to is that the descriptions of the seva, or the selfless service, that they do during the big festivals in India, and especially in Jagannath Puri. The Rath Yatra festival probably is what they're doing, and benefiting from the bottomless font of energy that brings, and how Guruji benefited from that experience. I'm really looking forward to exploring that as well. So that's a really interesting chapter that we're going to delve into. So let's start, shall we?
Yes.
Yes, let's. So it starts with a gift. Guruji has given his tirelessly prepared and patiently prepared a gift fashioned out of his own love and energy. 6 cauliflowers, pretty big ones apparently. And then he says he planted them with his own hands, and he watched over their growth with the tender care of a mother nursing her child. Such a sweet description of his gift and how much love and thought he's put into it, isn't it? And he says he 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 presented the vegetables with a ceremonial flourish. I was wondering what
Yeah, what did that
what
mean?
does
What did he
does that
do?
mean?
I sort of
Like,
imagine some sort of
yeah,
hand gesture,
yeah.
you know.
a pirouette, or like, you know, your foot raising above you, behind you as you hand them over, like in the cartoons. I don't know. It's but it's a very lovely opening. It's very devotional, and it reminds us of the gifts we offer to our gurus, be that on commemoration days at the center, or otherwise we, you know, offer flowers, donations, our love, and we then sometimes receive blessings that are tangible. But certainly we sometimes also have prasad, which is food that has been blessed by our gurus for us to enjoy after the service. So it's quite nice. And this whole section of how he's nursed these vegetables and loved them, it also reminded me of the chapter of the Saint amid Roses, chapter 38, and Luther Burbank, and how he used to grow his crop and his plants and fauna. It's he did it in similar kind of vein, and this might be why Guruji loved Luther Burbank so much, because apparently from his childhood he was into growing things in the same kind of way, which is an early insight into what's going to come later on. So yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I just want to throw in an anecdote that how amazing is it if anybody's ever had a relationship with growing food, you really do. Like, I connected with this sentence more than, you know, this time around, more than what I did when I first read it, maybe 7-8 years ago now, for the first time. At the Eco Village, we do grow our own food, and actually being able to plant the seed, you know, have this mother nursing the child, tender care comments, I really relate to that, because plucking it and giving it to somebody to eat, it feels like you're manifesting, you're part of the manifestation of creation. You really do connect to the element of Mother Nature. So yeah, it's the simplicity of life in this sense brings a lot of joy, and I really related to the opening of this chapter more so this time than when I first read it.
Nicely said. And can I say, as a recipient of the of your efforts in the Eco Village just a few weeks ago, I must say I felt the love and the joy with which you planted your salads. I remember Barbara was telling me that for weeks he's been guarding the salad and the lettuce and all those things, because you know the guests are coming in a few weeks. No one must touch this. No one must touch this vegetation. It's for the guests. And yeah, I received them with great relish, I must say. They were fantastic.
Glad to hear. Mother Nature.
Indeed. Indeed. You're very much present in your Eco Village. So, Guruji, Param Guruji Sri Yukteswar says, thank you. And he smiles with his appreciation. And he says, unusually, he says, keep them in your rooms. He's going to need them tomorrow for a special occasion, a special meal. And then Guruji explains the background a little bit. He says that I had just arrived in Puri. And we've got a footnote here, Puri, which is a few hundred miles south of Calcutta, and is a very famous and important city for devotees of Krishna. and his worship is celebrated with two immense annual festivals, the Snan Yatra and the Rath Yatra. And the Rath Yatra is probably the more famous of the two, which is where the deities from the ancient temple that you can see across the whole city, towering over all the other buildings with its flags and very, very high temple. Let's see a roof. It's got flat. It's the deities from that temple are kind of taken out in a procession, and everyone celebrates the festival on that day. So yeah, he just arrived there, and it says that he used to spend his college summer vacation with Sri Yukteswar at his ashram there, or he calls it seaside hermitage. And this also reminds us that, remember, Mukunda is still studying in full-time education. He's in college, which we probably may have forgotten because it's been so long since, and so much has happened since Sri Yukteswar forced him to carry on his studies, and he did so with a bit of doubt, but tribulation. He didn't want to, did he? But he carried on. But yeah, so he spent his summer with Sri Yukteswar in Puri, and now we have a bit of a background about this ashram in Puri, and I mentioned it previously in the previous episode, so you can go back and hear that if you'd like. But it says that the ashram here, he says that it was built by disciples, and it was a cheerful two-storied retreat, which fronts on the Bay of Bengal, which is the ocean next to it. And it's also called the Karar Ashram. And in the picture in the autobiography, it has Yogoda ashram on its walls. So that could be a kind of, I think we've discussed this in the past, but Yogananda has not just created Self-Realization Fellowship and Yoga Satsang Society, the names just out of thin air. He's used, what his gurus, the words and names his gurus used in the past. So he's carried on the tradition. So you can see that, yeah. So you can see that writing in Bengali, I think, in the picture in the autobiography on the previous page, or depending on which edition you've got on this page in chapter 15. So yes, there's an interesting story about this ashram actually, and how it was built. And this is from Swami Satyananda's book, his biography on Swami Sri Yukteswar. So what had happened was Sri Yukteswar had become quite eminent in the field of astrology, and he had made some pretty profound astrological calculations, and he had to get them verified. So he came from Serampur to Puri because there were some very learned astrologers there who would approve or endorse his work. And he presented it there, but they couldn't make a decision. They said, "Oh, our chief Mahashaya, our chief Pandit is not available. So even though your theories look good, we can't endorse them because he's not in town." And Sri Yukteswar then thought, "Oh gosh, I've come all this way. Perhaps was it a waste?" But not so. Lauren, can you read what happened?
The form of the huge ocean in the land of Jagannath, Puri, enraptured Sri Yukteswar's mind. He obtained a piece of land in the Swagadvar village by the sea from the local municipality's board, stating that he wished to establish an educational centre specialising in astrology and philosophical spiritual studies. In the month of Chaitra of the year 1904, at the time of the Holy Great Equinox, a small ashram house was founded at this place. Swamiji Maharaj named the ashram Karar Ashram, in keeping with the identity by which he was known amongst people. Keeping in mind that the meaning of Karar was servant, and in memory of his lineage, the ashram's name would be referred to in both ways. After he adopted the life of sannyas, he used to instruct the usage of the servant definition.
Very nice. So there was the birth and the origination of his ashram in Puri. Some useful information, which you may not have been aware of.
Very interesting.
Yeah, the book's full of very interesting things about Sri Yukteswar, actually. So yeah, so it carries on this section in the autobiography where Mukunda says he awoke the next morning and he was refreshed by the salty sea breezes and the quiet charm of the ashram life. Having been there, I can tell you that it's very close to the ocean. It's like 100 meters away. But right now, if you go, you wouldn't think it's close because there's like lots of buildings in the way. But back then, that probably wouldn't have been the case. From the top floor of the ashram, perhaps you could probably see the ocean, but that certainly isn't the case today because there's too many other buildings in the way. So yeah, so Mukunda probably would have, especially if he was on the upper floor, he would have not only tasted the salt in the air, but he would have actually seen the ocean if he looked out his window. But he described it very beautifully. He says it was the quiet charm of the ashram. And he also says that he says his guru's melodious voice was calling. And then he says, another thing I need to mention about Puri is that Shankaracharya, who he's basically the father of he's the founder of our lineage, goes from Shankaracharya. He established all the different branches of the Swami order. So Giri is the one we belong to, and it originated from Shankara. He established 4 ashrams around India, and one of them was in Puri. And so if you go there now, you can see where his original ashram was. You can it's quite close to Sri Yukteswar's ashram, but it's not too big a city anyway. So if you do go to that as well. We have some links. So yeah, so continuing the story, he says, my guru's melodious voice was calling, and before he responded, he looked down at his cherished cauliflowers, which he'd stowed under his bed. I really like this human element that Guruji, reveals of himself. It's like I often do this as well, especially when I've labored over something and I'm proud that it's like done and it was working, met my expectations or whatever. And then I also like look at it and just smile to myself. Good job to myself. But here, like Guruji is doing the same sort of thing, so it's quite nice. My recent installation of my robot lawnmower is what's keeping me happy these days.
Is it one of those ones that you can just set off to go on its own?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, you're living the very high life. Life of luxury.
Yep. It has some environmental benefits as well. The nutrients stay in the because it doesn't collect the mulch. It spreads it out on the lawn, and then everything stays in the environment rather than taking it to the skip whatever the organic waste goes to. So yeah, it's good.
Much better.
Greener lawn as well. So what does Sri Yukteswar say? He says, come, let's go to the beach. So everyone's getting their marching orders. And Sri Yukteswar led the way, and all the young disciples and Mukunda followed. And it says in a scattered group. Now, this is not something Sri Yukteswar is happy about. Scattered. He surveyed them in mild criticism. I've got some theories as to why that is. Not just the obvious in terms of disorganization, but Chris, can you read something out about something I found about walking? Actually, how this came about, how I discovered this is I was with a Norwegian person, another British Indian, a Scottish person, no, an Irish person, and 2 English people. And so we had quite a spectrum of people. And I was born in India, so I probably covered further east. So there's that. We were in India when I was like 19 or 20, and we were doing some volunteer work. And every day we had like a mile to walk from where we were staying, and through no planning, every day we noticed each of us got there at a certain time, and next person got there at the next time, next person, or it was like ones and twos, or it was kind of thing. And then we thought about it, and then one of the Norwegian lady, she was a sociologist, and she told me, oh, there's a whole study about people's walking speed and the links to culture and mentality. And I was like, wow, is there? And he was like, that could explain why we seem to be all walking at exactly the same pace but differently from one another. So with that background, Chris, read this section.
A study that observed the walking gait of over 15,000 people found that walking speed in adulthood reflects personality. The study also found that people who are active, enthusiastic, self-disciplined, and organized tend to walk faster and decline less in gait speed over time.
There you go. So Sri Yukteswar wants people to rise above their individual personalities and disorganization, and for everyone to walk at a good pace. Lauren.
I'm curious now to ask you both, how quick do you both walk, or how slow?
How quick do you walk?
Very fast. So I'm actually quite glad to read this. I thought recently, oh no, I walk too fast and I'm walking in too much of a rush. My pace is too quick, and I need to slow down and take in the scenery. But maybe not. Maybe I'll keep speed walking.
Yeah, I think in this point, probably every listener is thinking, oh, how fast I walk, or how do I walk? And I would imagine a correlation would be between those who are in the countryside, let's say, versus cities. So if you go to London, everybody walks pretty quickly, it seems, and people get annoyed by the tourists and, people who are, gawking at every attraction. But yeah, I would tend to walk at a faster pace if I was on my own, but tend to be quite malleable with being able to walk slower. So probably tell something about your personality when I do think about it, that I would sort of mimic a little bit too much sometimes. But anyway, I'll not psychoanalyze myself, but it is
live on air. What about you, Priyank? What's your walking speed?
I'm quite fast these days. I used to be quite leisurely, but I've evolved to become. So back in that time when I was talking about with my friends, there was 2 or 3 of us which were the slow walkers, and I was in that camp, the slow ones. But since then I've sped up a lot. Now I like to walk fast. And more, I like to do it to up my exercise levels as opposed to getting from A to B. I've got no real rush, I suppose, generally. If I am rushed, I usually run as opposed to walk fast.
Wow. See, I think I can walk probably faster than I can run. But don't walk too fast, because I remember one time I was walking to school and I walked so fast I tripped over my own feet. So be aware of your feet if you are speed walking.
Nice. I tend to fly upstairs, Priyank. I do walk pretty quickly, but tend to fly upstairs. I jump and leap and bound and stuff. So
nice.
We'll liken that to the analogy of spiritual practice, shall we?
Yes.
When did you last skip, Lauren?
Skip,
yeah. Just
probably
prancing along really
a few
joyfully.
months ago.
Oh yeah. Nice.
Probably. Sometimes, if you're in some sort of like open field, or you're just kind of messing around. Well, I don't know. I do.
when no one's looking.
Oh, people can look. That's okay. I don't mind. There's something quite joyous about, skipping along.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I like to do sideways skips and hops as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
like a crab skip.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you do
You
it
see-
at home?
Yeah, I often do. I like to take I've got a corridor which turns. I like to take that turned corridor in a bit of a fancy twist turn skip. I do like to skip along my corridors for some reason.
I love this. We're learning so much about each other.
Things you never thought you would know,
I
eh?
know.
Skipping. Yeah, so it's a joyful thing, skipping, isn't it? I really like it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So Sri Yukteswar is not happy. He says, when our Western brothers walk, they usually take pride in unison. This is so true for schools in England, isn't it? Like when you go on field trips, you have to go, into a big row, and there should be like not much gap in between the rows, and everyone should be holding hands, and you should walk. And the teachers at the front and teachers at the back. It's just like completely orchestrated. It's quite a fun thing to see, isn't it? When you see a group of, especially very young school children, just with such discipline walking.
Do you remember Priyank Neo Ching in one of the world's largest outdoor museum art show?
No.
Belfast in Brazil when we were there.
Oh yes, yeah.
All the kids on show.
Yes.
Were they disciplined?
No,
Would you describe them in that way?
They were not.
No.
They were not.
But it is very telling that, yeah.
Yes, and I suppose when Guruji talks about Western brethren, he probably wasn't talking about Brazil. We were talking about Europe probably. Back then, certainly would, because Europe was far ahead of the US in those days. So going forward, he even says a little rhyme as Sri Yukteswar watched. Well, he says, please march in 2 rows and keep the rhythmic step, as we said, with one another. And then he watched them as everyone did what he said, and then he began to sing. He said, boys go to and fro in a pretty little row. Don't know exactly what melody he sang, but I just made that one up. Did trial a few different melodies. That was the one I went with. Of course, he would have been speaking in Bengali as well, so we don't know exactly how this sounded.
Or would he have spoken English? Because he could speak.
True. I'd have my money on Bengali though for this, especially because
Bengali, right?
Yeah, because everyone, no, not many of his little boys in the ashram would have spoken English, I don't imagine. Obviously Mukunda did, but not that many others. So this is quite cool because I remember when I was at a summer camp in US when I was a teenager. I was one of the camp counselors, and they were, each camp has a song just like this, always go to and fro, and everyone just sings it with such like pride. Like, UK really and Europe really needs to do summer camps like US do, because it brings such great camaraderie and spirit and music and all those fantastic things that kids should do, but in nature that we don't do in Europe. But in US, every summer it's like a religion, isn't it? It's amazing. Yes, I remember doing that at my camp, similar thing, and it was quite nice. So he says, Guruji Mukunda says he couldn't but not admire the ease with which Sri Yukteswar was able to keep up with the brisk pace of his students, which is again quite nice. Chris has just found the Bengali translation for, is it, Chris? Boys go to and fro in a pretty little row.
Yeah, it's the Hindi. It's all I could find was the Hindi translation in Google. But have a go at that, Priyank.
लड़के इधर उधर आते जाते रहते हैं, एक बहुत छोटी सी पंक्ति.
Oh, that was beautiful. I love Hindi.
I yeah, I don't know how that'd make that into a song. I'm not going to attempt it. I need practice. But Lauren's learning Hindi, so you could read that as well, couldn't you, Lauren?
I don't know about that.
Nice.
Give it a good go.
Moving on. So next section is about entertainment, and it's like a little picture. It's so they're walking along, and Sri Yukteswar says, "Halt," and he looks at young Mukunda, and he says, "Did you remember to lock the back door of the hermitage?" Lauren, what would you say if Guruji asks you such a direct question, which he obviously has information on?
Oh, well, then you can only say what you think is right?
Would you dare say, "I think so"?
Well, I think that's a safer answer than yes, right? If you're not sure but you think you did, like Mukunda did, I think so, sir, because you think, okay, well, yes, but if there's a possibility, then maybe I didn't.
I feel like it was a very accusatory, and it was more of a rhetorical question than an actual question that he wanted a response to.
Well, yeah.
Because I would have thought that, and then if that was me, then I would have just frozen and said, "I don't know, Guruji. I may have been careless." Chris, what you said?
The fact that in quite what I read is quite dramatic fashion to say halt. You know, it's, bringing the movement to a stop for this purpose means that he probably suspects otherwise. Yeah, but I mean, what I would do, I'm probably more forgetful, even if I've done it. So I would have probably answered something similar. You know, these kind of tasks are funny. Like your brain, in theory, can remember about 8 things. So let's say you leave somewhere with your phone, say your glasses, your headsets, your keys, your wallet. These things add up, and then typically what we find is you can only remember a few things. So if you had to pick up one more thing, you're probably going to forget the other.
Oh man, that's the story of my life, but it's just 3 things actually. I wish it was 8. Oh man, my life would be so much more productive.
With yoga, though, you can go into many more.
Oh, can you? Oh,
so keep going.
Need to practice. And so Mukunda very sweetly says, "I think so." Sri Yukteswar was silent for a few minutes. Now this is not insignificant. You just, Sri Yukteswar has just said halt, which, by the way, sounds much harsher than it does in Hindi. In Hindi is ruk jao, which wouldn't be as harsh sounding, but especially because of the ways of the teacher in India or the guru, and it's like dramatic things to what may seem dramatic to you and I would be feel quite natural from that environment with your guru. So he says that it was silent for a few minutes. So perhaps you can imagine walking along, everyone's just stopped in their tracks. It's like that game of and what's that game when what's the time, Mr. Wolf, and you turn around and you turn around and everyone's just stopped. I can imagine all the kids just stopped, and then it's dinner time, it's about to come. But no, Sri Yukteswar was silent for a few minutes with a half suppressed smile. Now this is quite a telling half suppressed smile, isn't it, Lauren? On his lips.
And you can imagine the suspense. Like he's just asked Guruji a question, Guruji's answered, and then there's just silence for a few minutes, and you're thinking, well, what's going to happen? What's he going to say? And then he's kind of smiling, and you can just imagine the kind of confusion or perhaps intrigue from all of the boys what's going on, what's happening.
Oh, it's like, yes, Mukunda's going to get in trouble for once. The favorite, the golden child, is going to be not so golden. But this, I must say, I read into a lot about this half suppressed smile on Sri Yukteswar's lips. One of two things could be the cause of his half suppressed smile. A, he saw the whole drama that was about to unfold in the next, half an hour when they go back and the robbery happens. Or B, he at that second starts to influence what is going to happen with his mental radio. So those are two options. And as we go further into the story, I think it will reveal more and more that it's the latter of the two options, which is that he's already starting the ball rolling to essentially punish Mukunda for his
and he's amused by it, clearly.
Yeah, exactly. Careless attitude. Oh gosh.
Oh.
Leela. Gurus in their Leela, right? So he says, divine contemplation is not to be made an excuse for carelessness, especially material carelessness. And he says, you've neglected your duty in keeping the ashram safe, and for that you shall be punished.
I have to say, I often recall this when I'm looking up the centre, London Centre, and I think, oh gosh, don't let me be a repeat of Little Mukunda when I'm looking up. So yeah, it's a really good lesson for us all. You can be thinking of God all the time, yes, in an ideal world, but if it means you neglect your material duties, then you're not doing very well, and you need to do both. But I like the next line, I have to say.
Where did I freeze?
We were just talking about you've neglected your duty in safeguarding the ashram and you must be punished. And I was saying how, I think of it often when I'm looking up at the London Centre.
Oh, God. Oh, gosh. Yeah, that is a good way of looking at how important your duties are, I suppose, no matter what you're doing. But with this sentence, I was just saying before I was froze, I think that we don't know which of the two options it is still. It still could be either. It could be that he is just seeing what happens and that he's going to get punished, or that he's going to be the one that's doing the punishing. We still don't know who it is, which option it is. And yeah, Lauren's right. The next line is quite amusing. He says, I thought he was obscurely joking when he added that your 6 cauliflowers will soon be 5. -1. You got docked 1 point. And then so they turned around and had their marching orders to go back until they were close enough to the hermitage to see the insanity that was about to take place. So, but there's insanity and there's also grace. And I think hopefully you may not have considered the grace element, but I'll hopefully be able to explain my viewpoint and you may agree with me. So what happens is that they get close to the ashram and Sri Yukteswar tells them to rest, aram karo. And Mukunda, he looks across on the left of the to the left of the ashram and the road beyond, and he says that a man, Sri Yukteswar says, look ahead, look to the left of the ashram and observe the road. And he says, a certain man will get there in a second, and he will be the cause or the means for your punishment. Now, I want you to just bear that sentence in mind. A certain man will arrive there presently. I'll come back to it. And then Mukunda says, he says he hid his vexation, concealed it, because Guru Sri Yukteswar's remarks were incomprehensible. He had no way of understanding what he was talking about. And then he's thinking these things, and he also doesn't know that why he deserves to be chastised, because at the moment, at this point, he doesn't know that he didn't unlock it. He didn't know that he didn't lock it. So hence he's still befuddled. So then what happens is, as he's thinking these things, a peasant appears on the road where Sri Yukteswar told him to look, and he was dancing grotesquely, flinging his arms about with meaningless gestures. Is it just me, or is this description so detailed that I can picture every single thing here?
Yeah.
Like the man, how he's walking, how his arms are flailing, him just like looking about aimlessly. A scrawny, scruffy man, perhaps. It's just, I don't know if we were all there, or it's just so beautifully described that we can, all of us, visualize it. But it's such a comical scene, isn't it? Which is quite vivid. So he says that now Mukunda is, we said he was paralyzed with curiosity, and he had his eyes glued on the scene, and he calls it a hilarious scene, because now he's realized that the chastisement that he's about to receive is also going to be one part of the divine humor, comedy element of it, and he's about to enjoy the comedy part of the creation and the Leela, which is why he's calling it the hilarious. Now he's switched his attitude from being vexed to being, humored. So just as the man reached the point of the road where he would vanish from our view, Sri Yukteswar said, "He will return." Okay, so bear that also in mind, because I think it's at these 2 points that Sri Yukteswar actually must have scanned the thousands of minds around Puri at the time, searching for someone that was specifically wanted cauliflower. And in the next episode, this kind of confirmed, that's what he did. But I think in these two or three spots in this story, I think this is where he's actually done the scanning and realized that there is someone. What do you think, Lauren?
I wonder how many people were fancying cauliflower, because it's not exactly like a really tasty vegetable with a lot of flavor. It's quite bland, I find. So I wonder how many people in their minds were having a desire for cauliflower at that moment. And it's also quite humorous that he wants cauliflower so much, just the very fact. But yeah, it's about to get even more interesting, isn't it?
Maybe they were in season, and there was lots of cauliflower about. Obviously, none as good as Mukunda's prime 6 cauliflowers, premium range, tinged with love. Yeah, so I think Sri Yukteswar is hinted at 2 or 3 of these points. For example, before I said where Sri Yukteswar said, "A certain man will arrive here promptly." Yeah, and then here he said, "Now he will return." Right, so he picked him out initially. This is in the 1 kilometer radius there is this man, and he is insane, and I have to pick an insane person for what's about to take place. I'll explain that in a second. Obviously, this is just my theory on this whole instance, but it's quite a comical one. So he's picked out this man, and then he said, "Now he will return." So in my mind, now this is where he's kind of zapped him with the thought that, "Oh, I saw that house over there, and I'm going to go in that house. It looks like it's worth exploring." And I think he had to pick a kind of insane man, because if he had picked how we would define it as a sane man, a person of sane mind, they wouldn't think of going into a house that's not theirs, because this insane man is not a thief. Is in a sense, he's not. I don't think he's just a common thief. He's just an insane man. And Sri Yukteswar has just used his insanity in a way for this Leela. So if it was someone that was sane, this kind of thought, you may have had this thought, oh, that looks like a nice house, I'd like to see what's in there, but you'd end it there. So even if your guru had planted that seed, you wouldn't think, oh, let me explore that. But this insane person probably has a million of these thoughts, and he actually follows them. So Sri Yukteswar would have planted this seed, and he actually thought, oh yeah, this is cool, let me go and actually do that. But he would have thought it's actually come from myself, because he already has these thoughts all the time. Laura?
I also wonder if part of it or all of it is because he's a peasant, which means that he probably doesn't have much money, which means that he's probably really hungry, is also my guess. And when you're very hungry, you kind of don't operate how you normally operate. So maybe his hunger made his mind more influenced, because we're about to see how he reacts after he exits the ashram, right? And it's quite different. So it's curious, isn't it? But either way, the influence of Sri Yukteswar's will definitely here.
Yep. Will, auto-suggestion, call it what you will. But yeah, he was gonna go after succulent cauliflower. Sri Yukteswar says now he will return. So the peasant at that specific point, changed at once his direction and made for the back of the ashram. And he entered by the back door, and it was unlocked. The man
then shortly emerges with one of Guruji's prized cauliflowers. I'm just taking over because Priyanka seems to have frozen. So yes, so he emerges with one of the prized cauliflowers, and instead of flinging his arms like he was before, he was now being quite respectable. He was striding along. Obviously been quite Guruji describes it, invested with the dignity of possession. So he's obviously quite pleased that he'd got this lovely big prized cauliflower and his desire had been quenched. Welcome back, Priyank.
Thank you. I see that you got to that line.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so, yeah, Mukunda's reaction is quite comical as well. He calls it a farce, in which his role was that of a bewildered victim. But he did see the fact that he needed to go after this thief. He wasn't so enraptured with this comedy that he was going to let this slide. He went after him, but he was halfway, and Guru Sri Yukteswar called him back, which is quite cool. And Sri Yukteswar says the poor crazy man has been longing for a cauliflower. He explained between outbursts of mirth. So Sri Yukteswar has continuously found this hilariously funny.
I love this bit because we hear and see a story of Sri Yukteswar laughing, which is quite rare. I want to say, I don't know if that's true, but I don't recall any other stories where we hear Sri Yukteswar, shaking from head to foot with laughter and just finding it so funny. But it's such a sweet moment, I think, isn't it?
It is. And you can really imagine his laughing as well, and more so than the other gurus, because you can see his whole body gauging in the laughing energy. And Mukunda kind of describes that, isn't it, in this section. He said, yeah, Lauren?
I think we've also just had our mini debate. That wasn't not quite the right word earlier about the man with the cauliflower, and you said you thought he was crazy, and I said, oh, maybe he's hungry. But no, he is crazy, because Sri Yukteswar describes him as the poor crazy man. So there we go.
I think this is not the only instance as well, where he's
Yeah.
going to say this. Um, he said, I thought it would be a good idea if he got one of yours, so ill-guarded, because this poor man was after a cauliflower. But yeah, he probably was hungry as well, as Lauren said. So Mukunda Mukunda went now to his room to confirm that it was one of his cauliflowers that had gone, and he had found that the thief, evidently one with a vegetable fixation, had untouched his gold rings. So he wasn't a thief. He wasn't a common thief. Gold watch, money, lying openly on his blanket. He was one with a vegetable fixation that got his fix. Now this this is a joke. If someone had told you this joke, like, and used the term vegetable fixation now, it would be a good joke, wouldn't it? But this is a book 100 years ago. So this is what I meant by timeless comedy. This whole sketch is quite comical, but even in this detailed jokes like this vegetable fixation is funny then as it is funny now. So Mukunda crawled under his bed, where the basket of cauliflowers, completely hidden from Carol's sight, had yielded the object of his single-hearted desire. Now, this is where I'm going to say about the grace thing, because even though he was a mad man, he listened to his inner voice. And in this instance, it was his inner voice that was planted by Sri Yukteswar. And obviously, this is quite a mundane scenario, but he listened, right? And he got the reward. So he could have, most of us would have probably not have listened to that, would we? We can't go into a house that doesn't belong to us. But he did listen, and he did, and then he got the fruits of his very simple desire of a cauliflower. And this comes back to the whole paradigm where God works in mysterious ways. This is certainly the case for this story and this man, isn't it? Because he's willing to gratify even our most simple desires. And this is what he says in the next episode, in the next section of this chapter as well. So I think this wasn't just a madman. I think it was a madman that knew which voice to listen to, because he listened to Sri Yukteswar's. So it must be not a simple madman, but one which has some grace. Yeah, I think we'll leave it there, because the next section is going to talk. Chris, what's the next section going to talk about?
So the next section, we're going to delve into the kind of inner workings of just how this happened. Curiously, Sri Yukteswar didn't offer an explanation to Yogananda when he inquired at the time, but thankfully we've got a explanation from Guruji, from Paramahansa Yogananda himself, and how Sri Yukteswar was a perfect radio. So we're going to look at the idea of being able to be a broadcast station, receiving and sending, I guess the power of the mind through thoughts and the power of the mind. So we're going to have a couple of nice readings on willpower, positive thinking. So yeah, looking forward to covering the next section.
Excellent. Does anyone have any further reflections on this small part of half the story, shall we say, before we go into the science of it, which is going to be interesting expounding of it?
Yeah, I just want to reflect on a point Laura made at the sort of out of the conversation, which was the balance, where we had, I wouldn't say a heavy previous chapter, but it was very profound, very deep. And now we're switching to super lighthearted conversation. And it's just a very nice read. I didn't appreciate it when I first read the book, but just as we go through the chapters, I'm appreciating it more and more, how Guruji is able to have a nice balance between sort of profound digestion and sort of more lighthearted conversation, but of course with very profound meaning in there as well. It's nice.
Excellent. I think we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining us all. And apologies for my internet connection. Don't know what happened there. Mysteries of radio. Revealed in the next episode.
Indeed.
See you then. Take care,
Bye.
everyone. Bye bye.